We are having fun.
Episode 30?
29.
29. Shit.
We're 29 episodes in now. I mean, like, that's 29 episodes.
That's quite a bit.
We've really...
We're hustling it out.
We're muscling it out, Kira.
Last week's was really interesting. I liked last week, so that was really fascinating.
That was
If you
fun.
haven't checked it out, make sure you guys watch the last episode.
Virtual reality.
Yeah, and just like the future and what that looks like. And
we've been doing future themes lately.
Yeah.
Talking about future of relationships, future of virtual reality, future of, everything we can think of. And today, episode 29, we have a really good one for you.
Yeah, I think it's top of mind for a lot of people. And I think that's why, I think it's really interesting to take on the approach and really discuss what's happening as it pertains to the future of drugs. And there's the FDA side and, cancer treatments and everything that's been going on. And then there's the other side of it, which is microdosing. And I know people that microdose and use that as their anti-anxiety, anti-depression medication versus taking like a Zoloft or a Xanax, So
now explain to me, first off, for anybody who doesn't know, I'm curious about like microdosing. How does that work, or explain that to me, or what's that all about?
Yeah, it's fairly new-ish, I'd say. What it is you're taking 1/10 of a dose. Generally, it's you can do shrooms, acid, DMT. I think you can do even. It's taking it like the tiniest, like 2 drops worth of that drug. It's not a hallucinogenic at that point because you're not taking enough. It just is enough to sharpen your brain and clears the head a little bit more clarity in your thought process. So instead of taking like a Zoloft or a Xanax, you microdose, and it's not like, oh, I'm just going to try and wing it and try and figure out how much I'm supposed to take. These are actual companies that measure it out in a vial, and you just 2 drops under the tongue, and that's all you take. It's 1/10 of that drug.
And it apparently affects a lot of people in a positive way.
Yeah, I mean, I have yet to hear of anyone having a bad reaction to it. I know Joe Rogan did a podcast on it when he talked about it, that, how much it's been helping a lot of people that he knows personally. And I know people that are microdosing as well, that has seen a tremendous effect on the way they think, as well as its own natural antidepressant.
Wow. And so there's a large variety of different, it sounds like there's a large variety of different drugs you can do with a little vial. And do you think that this will expand? Is this like the coming wave of the future as more drugs are legalized?
Yeah, for sure. I think California is the next one. I think it's on the proposition for next year of legalizing shrooms. And I forgot how to say the word already. It's psilocybin. I don't know. There's a word.
I don't remember.
And it's really hard to say. And I'll just say shrooms for the next half hour because I can't think of how to say it.
Yeah, I guess we can't bring it up on
here, let me see.
Psilocybin.
Psilocybin.
Okay, and so what's...
I still can't say it even when Google tells me how to say it.
Psilocybin.
I don't know if it's Cybin or Sabin. Wait, hold on. Psilocybin.
Google is teaching us.
That's so hard to say.
We have AI teaching us here how to talk. We have an
psilocybin.
Off screen gives us the one. So psilocybin. So what's psilocybin?
So that's the that's basically shrooms. Okay. So I think when people took psychedelics, it was a way obviously to escape reality, and or when they take it now. But it also has a feel-good type of effect. And it's not, it doesn't have such negative side effects where you're like, oh, I'm a mess for the next 4 days, where people would drink alcohol to take away pain,
To
take
numb
away to
themselves.
numb the emotions. But then you've got the aftermath of what alcohol does to your body, what it does. You've got 3 or 4 days of trying to recover. You gain weight, all cirrhosis, all that kind of stuff. Whereas microdosing it doesn't seem at this point to have any side effects that are really even remotely close to what like a Zoloft or an Adderall or a Xanax has. I take Zoloft as an antidepressant and for years now, and I'm like, really want to get off this thing because there are side effects to it, and I'm don't want to deal with it anymore. I'd much rather take something that's came out of the ground, that was grown, that versus taking some kind of laboratory thing that
Something more natural as opposed to something that was created.
Yeah, and I think the world is going that direction anyways, more holistic, more homeopathic, all of that kind of stuff. I don't know. What do it's the new wave. Personally, in my life, my boyfriend's taking microdosing of psilocybin. I got it.
You got it. Wait, where's the applause sign? Round of applause. Thank you. Yes.
I think what do they say? Neuroplasticity. If you repeat it X amount of times, it'll start to stick in your brain. I think I officially have it in there now. But he takes a microdose, and what it is, he takes 1/10. So he has little drops, and it's a company that actually creates this microdosing. 2 drops under the tongue. It's 4 days on, 5 days off, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not on it every day because then your body will get used to it. But I've seen a massive change. And I know he's felt it as well, where his mind's, he has more clarity. Any depression that he was feeling or anything like that has diminished significantly. He just he's shocked that of what a change it is. And he doesn't take any other prescription medication, And to me, I'm like, oh, I mean, if he's been taking it over a month, and I don't see any reason why he would stop.
And so it's mushrooms, basically. Is that the
right?
The one?
Correct.
Okay.
And it's at it's 1/10 of a dose, which means you don't hallucinate. There's no like I'm getting high.
It's so small.
It's so tiny that it's just barely making changes in your thought process a little bit. So you're not so like, it's easier in our brain to think negative.
Yeah.
Our brain just goes that route. And it was designed that way. It was built that way so that we weren't eaten by saber-toothed tigers,
right.
So our brain patterns and the programs in our brain automatically go negative very, very quickly and automatically. Whereas and it's very hard to get out of that type of thought process unless you're like really consciously, it's really hard. And chemically, a lot of people can't get out of it. And that's why there's people that take Zoloft or Adderall or et cetera. Whereas this helps that.
That.
Yeah.
So we think to some degree, it sounds like, and from what I've read, that this drug wave is going to become more and more prominent in the future. And it's when it's done with care and how it's supposed to be done, but people obviously not abusing it, that it will actually have a lot of medical benefits for people in so many different ways.
Well, and I think and the other thing I was thinking about was, in the medical field and here in California, I mean, and in the US overall, how many people don't have health insurance?
Right.
How many people can't go to a psychiatrist to get their prescriptions? Whereas this, you don't need to have that. You can just.
So a different structure.
It's a completely different structure. And on top of that, the FDA isn't the be all end all. There's lobbyists in DC that push certain drugs along. There's a reason why we don't have certain drugs here, but they have them in Europe or Mexico. And it's because the drug companies won't make enough money here. And it's too much of a monetary system within the US as it pertains to like the FDA approved prescription drugs. The biggest thing for me is when you watch commercials and there's like a drug company for here's a new drug for X. And then like right before it's done in like lower voice, they'll say, and here's all your side effects. And it's like, could go blind, could lose your penis.
But there's a long list.
Your arm could fall off. And you're just like
It's like, oh boy. Oh,
Yeah,
boy,
I won't
gotta
have
get
any
away
blood
from this.
clots anymore in my heart. However, my penis could fall off. Like super, And that's, it's like, okay, is there a reason why this it shouldn't be happening? Why this wave of microdosing shouldn't be something? The problem is it may show up in drug testing at
Mhm.
your job if it's,
Right.
if your job is not okay with it. Meanwhile, it's the way you are able to
I mean, look at
get through.
athletes and
Yeah.
all that, with the controversy over taking, performance enhancing substances and all of that. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly been a lot of controversy around that and around all of it. I mean, I'm a person where, I'm much more open to things like this,
Yeah.
and testing things out and trying things. There's a lot of people who don't like doing that at all.
Do you think it's generational though? I feel like it's a generational thing where the people that are like, but even our parents are baby boomers. They were all the druggy, like hippie
Yes,
go lucky.
it's true. I don't know that I don't think it's as generational as people might think that it is, because there's people everywhere, that are more set in their ways, like all drugs is illegal, all
Right.
weed is illegal,
So you would try a microdose if
I, I don't know about that I would try one, but I'm certainly open to, for the benefit of long-term health of people who need certain drugs and such. I'm open to trying things out
but you
with
as
different
Geoff
things.
are good with your FDA approved medications for now.
For now, yeah. Because I don't really feel like I'm a person who has to like run out and get it or try it.
Right.
I'm open to other people.
Right.
Like, I'm not gonna clamp down on other people, but me myself, I don't feel like that. I mean, I take one prescribed drug that I've taken for 5.5 years, and it's great.
Do you have any side effects from it?
Zero.
Okay.
I
So
have
then
one
that
side
would be
effect. I have one side effect. I take Adderall for ADHD and have for 5.5 years, and it is. I mean, I've taken it every day of my life for 5.5 years, and it's just totally, changed everything for me.
What's the worst side
Um,
effect that you have?
The worst side effect is the cotton mouth.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Oh,
that's
I didn't know that was
I go
something that
like
was
this.
like.
Sometimes on the podcast, I'm like,
I didn't know you did that.
with my lips. Oh yeah.
Now that you told me that, I'm just gonna pay attention to that constantly.
And it's from the adderall. Yeah,
Oh, I had no idea.
that's the only.
Do you drink it in more water because you feel like you need more water? Is it more just like an uncomfortable like mouth dryness?
You feel like your mouth. I didn't know for a while that it was dryness, because my mouth just felt, because you don't know that it's dry. It doesn't necessarily feel
Right.
dry. It just felt like something was like my
Interesting.
lips feel bigger than they should be. Like it's checking up on something, like subconsciously. Your tongue's like, what's
Right.
up? And then my doctor is like, no, it's cottonmouth. It's one of the top. It's one of the big side effects.
Interesting.
But people get really big side effects from Adderall and other drugs. I mean, for some reason, and one thing I want to say is, when you do take a drug, I mean, you take it for long term, it literally alters
Oh, 100%.
your brain. It alters who you are. I mean, it can alter a lot. And there's concern about, people have to be very aware of that. For me, it's been a really positive experience. And I also don't have a very addictive personality.
Oh,
at
sure.
all. So like, if I were to have to stop it tomorrow, like I would just stop it, and just, if I'm going to be miserable for a while, I'm like, okay, I'm walking around miserable. Like, I don't really.
Well, you think you can.
I'm not an addictive, but
until you stop it, and then you don't know how your body's going to react. That's the thing.
Yeah, but with anything really, people like have food and alcohol and all sorts of addictions.
Do you have addiction in your family?
Yes, big time.
Because that's genetic.
Yes, we have addiction, but my grandmother wasn't. She smoked for 50 years, and then one day saw it was bad, and she's like, "That's it, not another cigarette," and threw it out the window.
way.
And she never smoked again. That was it.
You guys are disciplined. My family just likes to drink. And I mean
Mine.
drink.
Like, mine does too.
Like an unpleasant amount. But it's only a few members. Everyone else is pretty healthy. But it is definitely a genetic thing where you're like, even if you think you can get off, you don't never know what the chemistry is doing to your body. And I guess that's the part that's really interesting about microdosing is that from what they've discovered recently, about it, and there's more studies being done on it, they're not seeing a if at all side effects. When you take antidepressants, the biggest reason why a lot of men don't take antidepressants is because it can lower your sexual drive. You can have trouble performing, and as a male, I mean that's it's awful. So of course you don't want to take antidepressants, but then you just stay depressed. Now microdosing allows another option.
Yeah.
Without the side effects. And what's interesting is like you can, they've been doing MDMA microdosing for severe depressed patients.
Yeah.
Ketamine, which is a cat tranquilizer and also known as Special K on, street drug.
Yeah.
Acid you can microdose. I mean, there's so many of them and none of them really have such like a horrible side effects. So, I mean, I personally think the future is going to continue into this. I think the biggest problem is legalizing it.
Mm-hmm.
The problem in this country is the government will be like, well, where's our taxes from it? Because this is all under, if it's not legalized, they're not gaining taxes. So,
that's the problem.
That's the problem. There, of course the FDA is going to be like, no, it's terrible for you to do that.
Yeah.
But that's because they're not making money. At some point, people are going to see that doing small amounts of these types of drugs actually help them in a mental health state that they're not going to need their psychiatrists anymore. There's going to be bigger ramifications to this.
And how do you think that ultimately gets resolved? Because it's going to become a government, thing.
Well, it's like when they legalized marijuana, get the taxes.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, they're thinking, I think California, they said is the next one to legal, or where the first state, I believe, that will legalize psilocybin.
Here we go.
Shit.
That's we need our AI.
Psilocybin.
Psilocybin.
Yes, that's correct.
Psilocybin.
I'm just call it shrooms. Why can't we just call it what it is? It's freaking shrooms. Like, Jesus. Do we really have to call it by its like,
shrooms.
True nature? Have you ever taken psychedelic drugs?
No.
Would you ever want to try? And
I mean, I've weed and Adderall.
So you've had weed.
Oh yeah.
You've had weed.
Weed and Adderall, and
like edible, or you smoked it?
Both.
What did you feel
Many
when you
times.
took?
College. That was like the
10 minutes ago.
That was like the. I mean, in college, it's always, but for me, it's been like between those two and alcohol, and I don't drink nearly like I used to, but I've always kind of been like, that's enough. I'm like, I've got
You're like,
two
good,
going,
thanks.
and it's.
I don't need to add anymore.
I've
got my Adderall.
Weed and Adderall are enough for me.
Well, it was interesting when I worked at Google years ago. I mean, it was well talked about.
Yeah,
like it was out in the open that in order to get through the day, we all had to take drugs.
Yeah.
So
everybody,
all the employees, we're all just like, oh, so, and this was before it was legalized here, but we're all very openly in front of our managers. And I mean, the CEOs, we're talking Larry and Sergey kind of thing here. All talked about drugs. Like, it's like, Larry and Sergey go to Burning Man every year. And not that means they take drugs, but however, probably. I mean, you have to get through the stresses of life, and they never drug tested there. I mean, that would be hilarious.
Well, I will tell you straight up that the effect that Adderall has on me in a good way is it's much better and different effect than weed does. Because weed
Well, weed just like slows everything down to where
slows
you
everything
can't
down.
function.
I was already going slow. I needed the like upper
Right, like
the Adderall.
yeah, weed would not be good for you.
It
I
just
wonder
doesn't.
what you would be like though, on like if you did like an acid. At the end of January, I'm going to an ayahuasca ceremony, which I'm really excited about. Um, my boyfriend and I are gonna go sit. He's sat in a bunch of ceremonies. Out in California, they're very popular.
Yeah.
And it's a very experiential type of thing. Getting in touch with your higher self, and yeah, I think it's a
What do you do?
you smoke it, and then you
Wow.
sit in like a ceremony with other people. It's a very community type of like um reaching your
Gathering.
higher consciousness. Yeah. Now I'm concerned because I have a really, really high tolerance. I mean, like ridiculously high tolerance.
Uh-huh.
Where I'll be at a party, I'm like, what else you got? I'm bored. Everyone else is seeing like kaleidoscopes, and I'm like, what else do we have here?
So sidebar. I've done the weed and Adderall. Kira's done everything else.
No,
on
I
the
haven't done
planet.
everything. I haven't done crack.
Uh,
Like,
um,
I'm trying to think what else I've had. I've done K. I've done acid. I've done meth. Coke. I mean, these are all just kind of like whatever drugs. But
if I ate a mushroom, I can't even eat mushrooms in the kitchen. All right, I get like nightmares. If I ate one
shut
of these,
up.
I do. When I go
The
to Whole Foods
grocery
and they've
store mushrooms.
I have to take them out of like the chicken. when I'm
Shut
at
the
grocery
front
store.
door, Geoffrey.
I was doing that the other night, and I'm like, if I can't eat these mushrooms, man, if I ate a psychedelic mushroom, I would be dancing on the rooftops.
Oh my God.
Mary Poppins.
I have to eat bags of it for it to, and I'm afraid, I'm a little concerned when I go to the ceremony that I'm not going to feel it, because I'm gonna be like sitting there, and it happens sometimes. Sometimes you'll be at a ceremony.
Right.
And everyone's like viewing themselves in the heavens, and I'm like, and I'll be sitting there like, how long do we have to sit here for? And I'll be like, can I smoke some more? I don't know. We'll see. I'll let you know how it goes. I'm hoping I would love to get off Zoloft. I am not a fan. I've been on it for a while. I'm sick of taking it. I'd much rather take 2 little drops and have the exact same effect without the side effects. And I don't get too many side effects, but the ones that I do get, I'm done with it now. I don't want to deal with it anymore.
Yeah. But here's where the human brain is interesting. Adderall, for example, if people legitimately have ADHD, like I do, they're a little lower on dopamine than the average person who doesn't have ADHD.
Right.
And so what Adderall does is it ups that chemical in your brain. So if you already have where the dopamine is supposed to be, you take Adderall or any type of upper, meth or coke or whoever that's like it wires you into, you're bouncing off the roof, obviously. But when I take Adderall, I'm just like,
you're like, oh, normal human being.
I'm like, so that's how it is.
Well, do you take a lot?
I take 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, and a half of once. 50 milligrams.
Oh, 50 a day?
Yeah.
That's not that much, right?
I mean, the average is like 60, I think.
You take one at night? How do you go to sleep on that?
Oh, I've taken an Adderall and drank 2 Red Bulls and gotten right in bed for a peaceful night's sleep.
Oh my God.
Oh, yes. So as much as mushrooms
so
make me dance on the roof.
You have like 0.0% of
the uppers
dopamine.
The uppers, I'm just like perfection while everybody else is dancing on the roof.
That'd be really interesting.
So there must be something.
I've taken Adderall and it doesn't do jack shit. But of course, it's coming from me who like I've had surgery before, and they have given me pain meds, and nothing works. I mean, nothing. And I'm like feeling the pain. Like think of your wisdom teeth coming out. Like had my nose done, can't. I'm feeling every bit of pain, and I would call the doctor, and he's like, you can't take it anymore. You're an overdose, one. And so now he's like, it's actually good to know, because if you ever needed to go to the hospital, they're going to have to give you morphine, because no other pain med. You know how people would like, oh, let's drink and take, Vicodin. That shit didn't do anything for me. I could never party with Vicodin because I was like, this isn't even affecting pain, let alone making me high. So I have to I'm one of those people with like a really high metabolism.
So those didn't affect you at all.
I felt every bit of pain, and they were giving me copious amounts of Vicodin, all
Okay.
kinds.
I took Vicodin, and I didn't like the when I've had various surgeries and I've taken it for the pain afterwards, and I did not like the side effects of Vicodin.
See, I feel like these drugs, they're
I don't like the down.
yeah. See, that's the
Like
thing.
Vicodin's a downer. Those like Vicodin and what's that other painkiller? I don't know. Those when I've taken it for pain, it doesn't really work for me either. The ones that work for is like like Adderall that I take for ADHD is like has a profound impact on me. Weed, I've smoked it, but it doesn't really. A lot of people really like it. It doesn't quite have that effect on me as it does most people.
I don't know. I just like the idea of not having the side effects that all these drugs that the FDA approved and are like, oh, wait, sorry, this causes for your bones to be eaten.
Mm-hmm.
I used to take Depo-Provera, which was a birth control. And then after 5 years, they were like, oh, whoops, we just found out that it causes osteoporosis in 20-year-olds. And I'm like, what? It eats your bones. Like how this stuff gets on the market is uneffing believable. And then we're all having this controversy of like, oh, is microdosing okay? And it's like, okay.
Right.
In comparison to what's on the market and the, Ritalin, all that stuff can have such serious side effects for people.
Yeah.
That like, I really feel the future is in the microdosing. It's just a matter of, how do you regulate it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you regulate it? Do you allow humans just to figure it out on their own, like they always have?
That's the big problem, is how it's going to be regulated, how it's going to dealing with the government. I mean,
but you can't overdose on weed.
Yeah,
you can't like, you can overdose drinking. You can die from it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't die from smoking too much weed.
That
doesn't exist.
And did you say that Joe Rogan did a?
Yeah, he did. It was really interesting.
He was talking about.
Yeah, and
was he?
It was a lot about like how they're using a lot of the psychedelics to help with the clarity. And actually, I forgot who he had on. It was a guest that was talking how he had just started microdosing on shrooms, mm-hmm. and how much clearer and rational his mind became from it. And that his guest was like a older gentleman. I forgot who it was, but was talking about how it's really the greatest thing that he's jumped on. My boyfriend's,
wow,
is finding really great effects from it. And that's why I'm like, I mean, why have FDA drugs if you can just take something from the ground? And on top of that, it's not like, let me just figure out my dosage. It's actually companies creating the 1/10 of, and they tell you how much to take. It's very, very
it's measured and
yeah.
Well, I think that's where things are going. I mean, especially towards the earth.
I'd be interested to hear people's thoughts of like why it would be a bad thing. I don't see the bad in having the microdosing.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I could think that someone could come back with is that it's not tested enough. But how many times has there been a drug that comes out and then like 5 years later, they're like, oh, whoops,
right.
This now can cause X, So it's not like testing is the be all end all either. So, and I feel like our parents have been testing these psychedelic drugs for quite some time. So know that like
our parents' generation,
we know now. Yeah. I mean, my dad was like the biggest drug dealer in high school, apparently. So like my parents did a copious amount of drugs. Not when I was born, obviously. I mean, I was born in the 80s, but
mm-hmm.
I mean, they know their dosage. They know.
For sure.
I feel like they know that this could potentially work. But I would be interested to hear from people, viewers and listeners, of what they feel about microdosing, how helpful it's been in your life or someone that when the whole argument of marijuana, when it came to cancer patients and just bringing down the pain level and that type of stuff, it's just, I think it impacts people beyond just like, I want to get high. This is actual for like mental health. And mm-hmm. I think that's if it helps you from, going into severe depression and all that kind of stuff. I mean, why not?
There's a large pushback from a lot of people who don't want it to happen. And there's a lot of people who do, and that's the big controversy. There's a large amount of people.
I wonder if it's I wonder if you could look down the political lines and be like,
you can.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Blue versus red, and like the
Democrats
red are like
much, much, much more for pro legalizing weed.
even if it's microdosing, Republicans are like, ugh.
Oh yeah, Republicans are not.
Meanwhile, they're sitting in their homes taking like all the other crap that's on the FDA, as if that's like any better.
I mean, everybody wants safe regulations. They
Sure.
obviously don't want people walking around, being drug addicts and doing that. But Democrats are generally more for A/B testing things and trying things out medically, and trying to advance, whether it's weed or microdosing or whatever. While Republicans they look at the side of it that like the dangers of it and that it can do bad things to you and the side effects, and they're more how things have been is how things should be. So
as they sit at home drinking their highballs at 11 a.m., like pick a drug. I mean, everyone's doing one. It's like just a matter of like,
it's the big controversy, and it'll be interesting to see how things get resolved as time goes on. So this was great.
Yeah, microdose. I think it's time maybe for you to explore the pot.
I'm going to take my adderall and my weed and my
drink my Red Bull, go to sleep,
and drink my Red Bull. My
you adderall. Literally must have a 0.1% of dopamine.
I sleep so well with it. Like
it's bizarro.
It's
I think you're a robot.
Yeah, I really do. She has a conspiracy theory about that, but I think she's the robot, and that's the trick all along.
Don't tell anyone. That's our secret. That's not true.
Episode 29.
Yes.
Geoff and Kira.
Will we see them in the new year, or are we going to do one before?
I think we got to do one more.
Okay. So we'll do episode 30 when Geoff comes back from his family excursions and him staying in a hotel.
Which, PSA, by the way, public service announcement to my family. They were very informative while I was home Thanksgiving, and they said, "We enjoy seeing you. Don't say on your podcast that you're getting away from us." And I'm like, well, no, I know you enjoy seeing me, and I enjoy seeing you. But
what you should have said is like, "Thank you for watching my podcast."
Thanks. That's right. And I said, I obviously, it's always good to see them, and I don't want them to think that I'm not excited to see them and such. But it helps. It's always great for everybody in any family, I think, if you have more spaces to stay, spaces to live, that people can have their space. So I love the home hotel room when I'm home, but that's nothing I'm saying, and this is true. Like, I'm not trying to get away from them. Like, they're great. We have a good holiday.
I'd want to get away from my family. I'd admit it too. I'd be like, I need my own place. I can't handle anymore. Episode 29. I'm so happy that I was like, I've done meth before. I don't do drug. I'm not a drug addict. I just, I don't think there's any reason why you can't just say what you've done in the past when you were a youngin', I'm an older person now. I don't do that stuff. Anyways,
she doesn't.
Episode 29, the caveats.
Here at Launch Radio, we are the future, and the future is Launch Radio. Thank you guys. Later.
Bye.
Peace.